Hello everyone, welcome back to the Highland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. Got a very special tropical pitcher plant species to share with you guys today. This is one that I had been seeking out for a long time and wasn't able to find any available when I was actually able to afford them. Uh, Pure forms of this species too are kind of uncommon and so really sought after in cultivation. And some of the best clones out there can sometimes fetch a hefty price, but it is becoming more available as of recently. This is Nepenthes platychila, a species from northern central Borneo. It is endemic to the Hose Mountains of northern Borneo, where it's found roughly between 900 and 1400 meters in elevation. So this is what would be considered a cool intermediate to kind of warm highland species, meaning even though it's still uncommon in cultivation, it's actually a little bit easier to grow species than a lot of other popular highlanders because it does tolerate warmer temperatures than a lot of the others. And in some cases, it might actually do pretty well with a fair streak of, say, warm conditions during summer and then cooling down later. But also, it still does fairly well in your standard highland conditions as well. So kind of a versatile species. These guys tend to grow on kind of sandstone ridges or steep rocky slopes in a lot of places, or they will also grow epiphytically in lower elevation forests. So they will grow in mossy pads and such on the ground at higher elevations amongst rocks and such, or on moss pads on tree branches in lower elevations. So these guys may be found on trees sometimes up to 30, 40 meters up in the air, never even touching the ground as they grow. It is a moderately sized species, I would say. The vines usually grow to, they can reach up to about 16 feet in length, give or take, sometimes a little more. And unusual thing about this species is that it's considered to be one of the few branching species in the genus as well. It will grow just one simple straight vine like this oftentimes, but also it's not uncommon to find some of the side nodes activating fairly early on, and you'll actually get the plant growing multiple branches all at once. So it can sometimes become quite a large plant without becoming a very long plant. They produce a fairly fuzzy growth overall. They're covered in this very thin layer of kind of orangey brown hairs, and that covers the entire plant. Tops and bottoms of the leaves, the stem, everything. The leaves are very heavily decurrent attached to the stem, and that becomes more apparent, especially once it starts climbing like this. The sides of the leaf petiole actually run down the side of the stem for a little ways. It has a very slight petiolate attachment here, so the sides kind of clasp together a little bit, and then the actual lamina tends to be anywhere from obovate to kind of spatula in shape, so kind of elongate ovular to slightly tapered, with the larger end actually at the outer end of the leaf. The tendril usually attaches kind of very abruptly to the end of the leaf. Sometimes it actually attaches slightly underneath the end of the leaf rather than right at the end as well. And that's a trait that actually distinguishes it from some of its close relatives, which it often hybridizes with. Now, lower pitchers on this species are not considered generally to be the flashiest of pitchers, although once they're mature, they're still fairly attractive. They are fairly simple, usually cylindrical. Sometimes the lower third to half is slightly swollen, but it's otherwise cylindrical all the way throughout. Simple wings that run right up the front, and then a sloping kind of teardrop shaped mouth, sometimes flattens out towards the front, with a relatively thin, sometimes rounded, sometimes flattened out or crimped peristome underneath a simple ovular lid. Now, the coloration of these guys is pretty attractive. The outer pitcher is usually kind of this mottled, either yellow or green, with dark red, purple to brown or black blotches all over it. And then the peristome is often very distinctly kind of red and either yellow or green striped. Some forms, like this one here, actually kind of blush as they age as well, so the peristome actually develops a lot of more red and bronzy colors in the lighter areas, and the darker stripes may darken to black over time, but that varies quite a bit. Usually, though, they are kind of red mottled on a lighter background and a fairly heavily striped peristome. Simple, fairly elegant. These pitchers get to about 7 to 8 inches tall, so they're not huge, but they're definitely not one of the smaller species either. Now this is a young basil, so the lower pitchers it's producing are fairly small right now, but it will get quite a bit larger eventually. Now what this species is really known for, though, is when it transitions to upper pitchers, and it's quite a dramatic transition. You go from that cylindrical shape to quite suddenly broad and funnel shaped. These upper pitchers are generally slightly shorter than the lower pitchers, usually maxing out around 6 inches tall, but they are much more flashy and eye-catching. Usually a very thin tubular base, and then either it gradually tapers or very abruptly balloons out in the upper portion of the pitcher to a broad funnel shape, and then loses most or all of the wings down the front. And that peristome goes from being kind of crimped and relatively thin to broad, flat, almost perfectly smooth as well, and glossy shiny, especially when it starts secreting nectar to attract insects. Now, the coloration can be quite variable. In some like mine here, it may lose all of the patterning on the exterior of the pitcher, or you may get them retaining all of that mottling as well, and it just turns slightly lighter. So cream to yellowish background with heavy mottling of kind of rusty red-brown on the outside. The peristome just as variable in coloration as the lower pitchers are, sometimes very strongly striped with yellow and like dark red and brown or black stripes, or again, like mine, it may blush over time. It opened up with fairly light striping and not a lot of color otherwise, and then over time it ages with this infusion of red and sometimes purple colors. And some of the best forms have kind of that infusion of coloration, but there's this rich purple background and very, very dark striping as the dark stripes actually deepen with age. These are what these guys are generally grown for, that incredible flared peristome, very flat and smooth, very distinctive. There's really no other species in the genus that looks quite like this one. Very unique. Now, like all Nepenthes, of course, once they're fully mature, they will flower, and they are dioecious, meaning the plant is either male or female. And to produce seeds, there has to be two of them flowering at the same time. Pollen from the male transferred to the female. Usually when these guys flower, like most species, their flowers are kind of funky odored, so they're attracting like fungus gnats and beetles and moths and such to them, oftentimes nighttime pollinators. So, and then the seeds, of course, take several months to ripen. They're the usual, very thin filamentous. They look like wood splinters when they come out, and they are dispersed by wind and water out into hopefully a fairly open location where they can sprout and start growing. It usually takes 3 to 5 years for them to go from seed to semi-mature, sometimes up to 10 years before they reach flowering size. So, like most Nepenthes, fairly slow growing, although not as slow as some other species. You may get a brand new leaf every single month or month and a half or so from these guys. So a decent rate as far as the Nepenthes go, slow growing as far as plants go. Now this species, again, it's fairly easy in cultivation because it's a little bit more tolerant than other species of Highlanders. So you get plants that will tolerate sometimes conditions of 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and sometimes not dropping much below 70 at night. Although preferably you would want to keep these guys no hotter than around 80, 85 degrees Fahrenheit during the day and dropping into the low 60s, upper 50s Fahrenheit at night for their best health. Plants grown in highland conditions often might be a little slower, but they're usually a little more robust in health. They will grow in your standard Nepenthes mix, so like a 1-to-1 sphagnum perlite, or in my case, 1-to-1-to-1 sphagnum perlite and coconut chips. Make sure to rinse all those ingredients very well so you don't have excess salts or nutrients in there. And it just kind of wants a nice, loose, aerated soil that stays just moist at all times. These guys do not want it sopping wet, but they also do not tolerate drying out. So generally, if you have a nice big pot, this size or larger, you want to basically wait until the upper surface of the soil just starts to dry out, and then you soak it. And then leave that for the next several days to a week or so, depending on your humidity levels. These guys, like most Nepenthes, like fairly strong light as well. Maybe not direct sun all the time, although you can usually acclimate them to tolerate that, but they do want fairly strong dappled light or diffused strong artificial light. Basically, they'll do just fine under the brightest artificial LEDs and such that you can find. And the brighter the light, usually, the better, the stronger the leaves will be, the bigger and more colorful the pictures will be as well. Now, this species, again, it's found only in the Hose Mountains, and pure ones are kind of uncommon because this species quite readily hybridizes in the wild with its relative Nepenthes dactylifera, part of the Fusca complex. And oftentimes those hybrids will back cross, so you get a lot of kind of intergrades between the two. Plants that look mostly like platychila, but they have much thinner or really crimped, folded down peristomes. Larger, lower pitchers with broader peristomes, and then uppers that don't look quite as flashy. So pure ones that are for sure the true species that don't have too much introgression showing in them, with this nice flat peristome here that does not fold back too much and is broad, heavily striped and such. These are a little less common in cultivation and so do command a bit of a higher price. Luckily, they are common enough that hopefully we are not seeing too much in the way of poaching. A lot of populations in the Hose Mountains are still fairly protected and fairly remote, but ones that are a little more accessible may still be at risk of both poaching and habitat destruction, but they are fairly widespread in cultivation. Several adult clones that are regularly produced by places like Wistuba, Exotica plants, you will often see cuttings given out from very established growers, but expect a pure plant like this, including just maybe a young seedling half the size of this basil here. Probably expect that for a pure plant to be between $70 and $100 a piece, because you're basically paying for the quality of what you will see in the upper pitchers eventually. Now, if you got that kind of cash laying around, then it's certainly a worthy species to try and grow. Just expect if you get a young one and you're waiting for those uppers, probably at least a couple years before they get there. But once they start vining and producing uppers, that is most of what you will get to see from them there and out. Now, because this plant tends to pass on that broad peristome trait to its hybrids as well, that might be a more feasible option. You still get plants that look really, really cool, maybe not pure platycala, but very similar. And so some crosses that I might recommend to you are Burbage cross platycila, Glandulifera cross platycila, or there are a lot of more complex hybrids coming out now where the seedlings, you might be able to get those for between 30 and 45 bucks a piece. A little more economical, and you will still get some incredible flashy plants from that. Now that is about all that I have for this species right now. Certainly if I've missed anything, make sure to leave your comments and questions down below the video here. If you would like to learn more about these plants or the animals that I work with and such, make sure to visit my website at carltoncarnivores.com. You got the blog and database there you can peruse through, or follow me on social media to find other video and photo tidbits that I'm always putting out. If you would like to see more of these videos and other things that are coming out, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Share with others who may enjoy watching this. Leave a like on the video as well. And stay tuned for what else will be coming up. I've always got new things coming out. If you would like to help support the production of these videos, because the editing does take a while and the wildlife film trips and such are quite expensive and time consuming, consider buying some of the plants or merchandise that are available at the website shop, or become a Patreon member where you can get early access to the videos, access to the monthly seed contests that I do. Past couple of months I have given out some Nepenthes seed packets, things that you will not see in the shop at all. So that's a chance to get things that are a lot more uncommon or more expensive. You can also do one-time donations at Ko-fi or contact me for other methods. But most of the links for these things will be in the video description below. Until next time though, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.